would have put Jack away.
I think
I know, right?
Yeah.
Protecting.
Yeah.
Did you just catch it from me? Or?
Yeah, he just threw it. Jammed my finger, broke. Okay. Laser. Man, I call it.
All right, I think I'm being given the high sign saying it's 6 o'clock and it's ready to get started. Okay, let me call us to order. Ooh, geez, sorry. New microphones, very sensitive. In accordance with South Carolina Code of Laws 1985, Section 30-4-80-E, the following have been notified of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting. The Herald, the Charlotte Observer, CN2, and WRHI. I'd ask you please to join me first for a moment of silence. Thank you. We'll now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. You have all been provided a copy of the agenda. Were there any adjustments or corrections? If not, that will stand with unanimous consent. Is Jenny in the background? I believe I have one card for our public participation.
She was out in the hall.
Okay, if there's only one, then Daphne Thompson, if you want to come to the podium, there you are. If you'll state your name, address, and then you've got 5 minutes to address the board. Is the microphone, hold on, make sure the microphone's on. Okay, now you should be on.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Now we can.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Daphne Thompson, and I live on Thorn Creek Lane in TGK. Some creative Fort Mill Elementary School students decided to enter the Scarecrow contest in the City of Fort Mill contest. They based their Scarecrow on the popular elementary book series Jasper Rabbit's Creepy Tales, specifically the creepy tale of underwear. Their Scarecrow exhibit had several pairs of glow-in-the-dark green underwear with jack-o'-lantern faces on them. Their entry was in a prime location. A few days ago, a business person influenced by extremist propaganda spread by groups in favor of banning or censoring books started reviling the kids' exhibit, saying it was obscene. This is green glow-in-the-dark underwear with jack-o'-lantern faces. This got so bad, the kids started crying. Fortunately, the sponsor, the City of Fort Mill, supported the kids, but a decision was made by the kids' group because of everything that was being said to the kids to relocate the Scarecrow. It's now far away from most of the main scarecrows. After World War II, prominent German pastor Martin Niemöller said, first they came for the socialists and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me and there was no one left to speak for me. In York County, first the extremists have come for the LGBTQ+ community, trying to erase their existence through the soft genocide of banning or censoring books about them. Then the local extremists came for the librarians. The York County Council has now stacked the local library board with indoctrinators instead of library and educational professionals. Now, one of these extremists has gone after local elementary school children and made them think there's something wrong with reading good books. That's terrible. Who knows if this could affect their love of reading books forever. The last school board election, extremists tried to go after your school board, but mostly they were unsuccessful, thanks to y'all's wise decision to have a widely shared panel discussion, making it obvious who did not have the ability to serve the board well. So I'm here tonight to say thank you for doing that. Please continue that panel discussion at every election so people can tell who the people are who would be qualified to serve on the board. And thank you for your service to all Fort Mill School District students.
Thank you. All right, we do have several staff reports tonight. The next item on our agenda is a review of the district report card. Dr. Wakesness, Mr. Roaring, and Renee Beck. I'm not sure if you're going to sort of broker the conversation between everybody.
Yes, we're going to
Okay.
we'll all be part of it. I'm going to get started, though.
All right, thank you.
All right, so one of my favorite presentations of the year is going over our school and district report cards. So that's what we're going to do this evening. So just a little bit of background on the purpose of the report card and accountability system. You see on the screen here, this is from the State Department. The express goal of the system is to improve teaching and learning. I would say that we would want to hold ourselves accountable either way, whether the state told us to or not, or the federal system, but this is the program we have to work through, and I think you'll see we do really well with it. So there are state requirements to the accountability system, and there also are federal requirements. So just to briefly go over those, in state law, it says that schools receive overall ratings. So you'll see they get excellent, good, average, below average, unsatisfactory. However, districts don't get an actual like a name descriptor for their overall performance. It's based on a 100-point scale. Each indicator within the system also receives a rating. You see the ratings there on the screen, what they can be, and it has to be reported online. So those are the some of the state requirements for the accountability system. And then also there's some federal requirements that the state must meet when they present their plan. So the federal law says that it must include ELA and math only. Science or social studies is not required. We do have components of both of those in our state system, but the federal law is ELA and math. Something with English language proficiency is required. Your graduation rate's required. Some kind of growth measure is left to the state's discretion, but there has to be some type of growth measure on the report cards. There must be an indicator for school quality, student success, and all subgroup performances must be reported on all indicators. So those are some of the requirements that the state had to put together in order to get this approved by, to fall within federal law. I like to start with this slide and also end with this slide. So you may remember this from last year, and now the numbers are updated with this year's numbers. But this is one of my favorite visuals because I think it really shows the work that we do as a school system. So when students come into kindergarten, towards the very beginning of the year, they take the kindergarten readiness assessment, the KRA. And by that metric, we have about 52% of our students that are deemed ready for kindergarten, ready to learn. And that might seem kind of low, but that's actually really high. I think the state average is around 30% or 25%. So we start at 52%. Then there's a second grade on track for success metric where we look where our students are at in second grade and they project to see if they are on track for success, and we're about 68%. Fast forward all the way up to college and career ready when they're in high school. We have 84% of our students meeting the definition of college or career ready. And then, of course, our graduation rate, which astonishes me. It is extremely high compared to just about every single other place at 95.6%. So that's an overview, and we'll talk a little bit more about the specifics as we go through. All right, and now Matt's going to come up.
Okay, so the first slide here is just kind of a definition of the overall ratings. You can see that it goes from excellent all the way down to unsatisfactory, where excellent is really when a school is performing, their performance substantially exceeds the criteria to ensure all students meet that profile, the SE graduate. And then it goes down to unsatisfactory, where the school might fail to meet the criteria of the profile, the SE graduate. What we like to tell our stakeholders, and especially our principals, is that if you look at the average line there, it's really the school performance meets the criteria. So that means that that average school is on track for success, and anything above that is just kind of in addition to that, meeting the criteria. So here are our overall ratings for the district. We do have 17 excellent schools, 2 good school ratings, and then 1 average school rating. I gave you just a snip of the report card site here so you can see kind of where to find that overall rating there. This is a random school from somewhere else in the state. But you can see that this is kind of tracking really closely to where we were last year. Our average school was actually just 1/100th of a point away from making it to a good school. And then we had one of the good schools just 1 point away from making an excellent school. So it's really close to where we were last year. We just had, a few different answers on some tests or a few different answers on survey questions. We might have had all excellent schools. So really doing well there. Again, overall ratings are out of 100, so that overall rating number is kind of a combination of all the different indicators to add up to 100 points. And again, districts do not receive ratings, only schools receive ratings. So our first indicator, and we're going to go through each one of the indicators. I'll take half of them, and then Renee will take the other half. Academic achievement is our first one, and this is worth 35 points for elementary schools and middle schools. And then it's worth 25 points for high schools because they have some other indicators that they get points for. So with academic achievements, we're really continuing our tradition of excellence here. We had all the schools really are ranking in the top 3 of the state in this indicator. And points are really doled out for, and you can see here, there's the 4 categories for SU Ready. There's exceeds, meets, approaches, and does not meet. So students are receiving points for exceeds, meets, and approaches, but they do not receive points for does not meet. And that's the same thing with high school EOC exams. So academic achievement is just for ELA and math. So we have English 1 and Algebra 1 EOCs counting for this one. And students receive points for scoring A through D, but scores of F do not receive points for this indicator. So this is the one. We don't have many changes to the report card this year, but this one is the one that changed. You'll see EOC scores fluctuated a little bit between last year and this year. And that is because in previous years, we had only the graduating cohorts EOC scores count in this metric. So that means that the students that graduated in, let's say, 2022 on the 2023 report card, they would, all of their EOC scores, whenever they took them, so it's kind of like historical data, those would count on the report card. This year, because if you think about this graduating class, a lot of them missed testing back in the 1920 school year and the 2021 school year because they were allowed to opt out. So because of all those missed tests, the state and the Education Oversight Committee, they decided that it really wouldn't be fair to give ratings with the few amount of tests that they had for this graduating cohort. So what they decided to do was to take all of the EOC scores, like ever that happened in history, for students that were enrolled in high schools and count them this year only for this indicator. So it's really just a combination of all the EOC scores that a student really ever took, whether they were in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, or 12th grade at their enrolled high school. So it's a really larger sample size, and that's why possibly there's some fluctuation in the scores. The thing moving forward is going to be to only count the scores that are taken in that current year to put onto the report card for the following year. So it's going to kind of balance out the system a little bit, but this year just needed to be kind of like that slate cleaning year because of the COVID exclusions that happened back in the pandemic time. Try to make that as clear as possible. Hopefully I did a good job. It was a little confusing to us as well, and then once we got it all figured out, I think it worked out. It worked out, but you'll see some fluctuation in scores a little bit. But really, overall, it didn't really affect our ranking in the state. I think we did a great job in this academic achievement category, and all of our schools still rated excellent or good in this category. Continuing on with preparing for success, this one is worth 10 points across the board. We had 10 points out of the 100 points total that you could possibly get. This is the grade 4 and 6 SC Ready science scores. So you can see it's kind of set up the same way where exceeds, meets, and approaches. Students scoring in those categories receive 1, 2, or 3 points. And then the high school biology and US history exams count for this metric as well. The earned points over the maximum amount of points equals that percentage of awarded points. Last year, we did not have US history count for this metric. We had only biology because US history standards changed. So now they've added back US history into this metric. So again, doing really well. We had all of our schools excellent or good in this category as well. All right, one of my favorites indicators is English learners progress, or this is for our multilingual students that we have in the district. It's worth 10 out of the 100 points. It is for schools that have a total of 20 or more students assessed on the access test, which is the English proficiency test in 4 different domains: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So it's really straightforward. It's criterion reference, which means it's just kind of if a student meets their proficiency target, they get points. There's nothing really fancy about the calculations. If a school has 80% of their students meeting proficiency, they're rated excellent. So we had 18 out of 20 schools that were rated in this indicator. 2 schools did not meet that 20 student criteria to have a score calculated for them. All 18 of our schools that were rated had excellent, good, or average ratings. And then 13 out of our 18 schools were rated excellent. And again, I think this is probably the 4th or 5th year in a row that we've been #1 in the state in this category as well. Kudos to our ESOL teachers and Amber Smith for leading them. I think she's here tonight. I did that just for her. There she is. And school climates. This one's also worth 10 points out of the 100 points. I like to put the very calculus, I guess, the calculus that goes into this indicator from the accountability manual. It is difficult to understand from just at first glance, but I think we have a pretty good handle on it now. It really is it's a combination of different questions and weighted a little bit differently from the SCDE teacher and student surveys that are given out at the end of the year. Only the teacher and student surveys count. We do have parent surveys as well, but the teacher and student survey responses are, again, they go through these calculations. We have to get a mandatory participation rate of 80%, and really like to thank the school testing coordinators for having our numbers go up this year. We had 92.8% of teachers respond and 87.8% of students respond. So really high percentage rates. Those are some of the highest in the state as well. But really, just looking at all the different questions and responses that go into these different categories in the school climate survey, from school safety to learning environment, to leadership styles and performance, just a lot of things that go into this one. But 19 out of our 20 schools received ratings of average or above for this school climate indicator. And Renee is going to take you through the rest of the indicators.
Okay, so the next indicator is student progress, and this is worth 35 points, and this is just for elementary and middle schools, and it is for how much students grow or gain, academic gains in ELA and math on SC Ready compared to everybody else in the state that's performed similar to them. And it is a value-added system from SC Ready, and it uses the previous 2 years if they had 2 prior years. And then that's their pre-test, and then we take the current year as their post-test to see how much they grew. And then to come up with the rating, we take how all students grew at that school and then how much the lowest 20% grew. So they average those 2 scores together to come up with the overall rating for that particular indicator. So keep in mind, the lowest 20% in each school count twice because they're in the lowest 20% and they're in the all group. And as you can see up here, 15 out of 17 elementary and middle schools received ratings of average or above on this indicator. And since it is SC Ready, this does not apply to high schools. The next indicator, which we always do really well on, which you already saw from the opening slide with Mike, is the graduation rate. It's worth 25 points, and of course it's for high schools only. And it tracks students from the first year in high school until they get to their 4th year and if they graduated or not. And it is quite difficult to remove them. There's just a few ways to remove them from the denominator. So if they leave your school, if you don't have a way to track why they left, you can't take them out of the denominator. You're still responsible for their graduation. And we convert the graduation rate to points. So basically, if you have a 90% graduation rate or higher, you're going to receive an excellent rating. And we're always happy to report that all of our schools received an excellent rating because they had a 90% graduation rate or higher. And you can see here what our graduation rate was over the past 4 years, above 95% for all of those years. You can see the state numbers right below there. So we are approximately 12% higher than the state for the past 4 years, which I think is wonderful to look at those numbers. And we always like to say that graduation rate is a K-12 outcome. You don't learn everything you need to graduate in 12th grade or even just in high school. So this accomplishment is a big shout out, not just to our high schools, but also to our elementary and middle schools. The high schools get all the points, but all of our schools deserve the credit for graduation rate. This indicator, I know there's a lot to look at right here. Again, it's just a high school only rating worth 25 points. It's college and career readiness. So the left side of your screen is how students can become college ready as deemed by the state, and that is a 20 or higher on ACT, 10/20 on SAT, a 3 on one or more AP exams, dual credit of 6 hours, which is usually 2 classes with a C average or better. And I do want to mention that the list of dual credit courses is not every dual credit course. It's only ones that are accepted by the state. And Mike has been in touch with the state many times to try to get some more of our courses to be approved. We did get one more approved this year, and we hope to get hopefully Spanish and French approved this year. We feel like they pretty much said they're going to do it. But it's not on, we haven't seen the list yet, so we're not for sure. But so just know those dual credit courses, it's not everyone is state-approved dual credit courses. Then on the right-hand side of the screen, to be career ready, you need a 31 on ASVAB, a silver level on the career assessment. For CTE, you have to be a completer and have the appropriate national credential. We have tons of CTE completers, but you have to have the state-approved national credential. You can also have the state-approved work-based learning, or for some of our students with disabilities could qualify for the employability credential. And again, happy to report that all of our high schools received an excellent rating on this. We were at 84% of our graduating cohort being college or career ready. And once again, this is not just high school that makes this happen. You don't become these things in 4 years. It takes 12 years to get there. And to look historically, longitudinally at some of these numbers. So the first column is college or career ready, and this is the one that is used for the rating on the report card, just the first one. But they report on all 4 of these. So the first one, like we said on the prior slide, we're at 84% for college or career ready. For college and career ready, we're at 57.1. Just college ready, 60.7, and just career ready at 80.4. And like I said earlier, we are working hard with our high schools to make sure we are doing what we can to prove that our students are college and career ready. We feel like when our students leave here, they are college or career ready, but we just have to be more aligned with what the state metrics are, and we are working very closely with our high schools to make sure that we are dotting our I's and crossing our T's. And the ultimate goal is for this number to match what our graduation rate is. All right, and back to Mike.
So I get to do the fun part and talk about some of our celebration points. So you see on the screen some of our points of celebration. The KRA, I mentioned that earlier, way ahead of the state average. That is a result of our families in our community that really care about education. So shout out to our families for having our students ready when they come to us. The on-track numbers for first and second grade. Our CTE completers, Renee kind of mentioned, we had a great increase from 283 to 552, and then you see it paired with the industry credentials. And we have all types of programs. We have business programs, we have auto tech, we have the whole gamut from the engineering courses, so lots of opportunities for students. Our 3-year average of percentage of teachers returning from previous years is 87.7, which I think is phenomenal in this market. We want that to be 100%, but we're a lot better off than other places. Our teacher attendance rate's really high. In just about every category, we are number 1 in the state. If not number 1, number 2 or number 3, but most of the time number 1. And then next, the last bullet on there, and the next graphic after another slide is how do we compare nationally? There's not a whole lot we can compare to national averages in education, but there are a few. So we'll get to that after this next slide. All 3 of our high schools received an overall rating of excellent. All of our middle schools received a rating of excellent, and 8 of our elementary schools were rated excellent. I think that is a phenomenal outcome that is a result of a lot of hard work on a lot of people's part. Matt mentioned this, our district has the highest ranking in the state for progress of our English language learners. Our graduation rate was 95.6, which was the 2nd highest in the state. So we got slightly beat out this year. So we're a little bit upset about that, but still 95.6 is a great number. SC Ready, shout out to our 3rd through 8th graders, highest ranking district in ELA, math, and PASS, and science. So that covers all 3 of the subjects. And then in our high schools, the highest average passing rate in each subject when compared to traditional high schools in the state. Sometimes the governor schools beat us out, but that's a whole different type of school. So we don't often compare ourselves to schools with admission criteria. So how do we compare nationally? And that's hard to do because there's not a whole lot of metrics that are the same from state to state. So a couple of them, AP scores and SAT scores, we're going to talk about. So this chart here, you see the percent of our students scoring between a 3 and a 5. That's what's considered passing. Some colleges will give you credit for a 3. Some of the more selective colleges, you might need a 4. And some of the super selective colleges, you might need a 5. But our goal is to get a 3, 4, or 5. That's considered passing. And you see the percentage of our students who pass the exams compared to the state average and the U.S. average. And we are above the state average in every single one by a lot, and we are above the U.S. average in all but a handful of them as well. Our SAT scores, you see our score on the top line there, and then the state and the national average. So our average composite score for last year was 1077. The state's average is 1020, and the national average is 1010. So this is another way we could look at how we're doing compared to schools across the country. One thing I'm really proud of here is our percent of students tested. You see it's 92.1. And in South Carolina, the state actually pays for every student to take the SAT or ACT. So that is a great thing because maybe a student that doesn't think they're quite college material, they take the test, it's free, and they do well enough to say, well, hey, maybe I can go to college. But when that happens, your overall numbers tend to come down because you don't have just the honors track kids, so to speak, taking the test. So the numbers usually come down a little bit when you have a high percentage of testing, but I think it's well worth the trade-off to get students maybe saying, hey, maybe I can do college. And then again, to end with this slide, to show our success as students move through our school district. I think this is a result of a lot of hard work. Obviously, the students come to us ready for 52% of the kids, which is really high for KRA. So the commitment to education that our families show and the work they do with their students outside of school. And then once they get to us, all the work our teachers do, our counselors, our support staff, and then it goes all the way up to the principals. Lots of times the principals will take none of the credit and say it's all on the staff, which, you know, the teachers are the most important part, but the principals are too. And I think it goes all the way up to here with the board and Dr. Epps also, just with the commitment to education. So that is our school report card update. What questions do we have?
I got 4 questions for you.
Okay.
I've only have one.
Hit your green button.
Anthony, go
Green
first.
button. Buttons are all on.
Mine's on.
You hit the green button? It's on. All right, then you're good.
Okay, got it. Sorry about that. All right. First question is, so I see the progression when we're looking at the kindergarten readiness, 52.6%, and then migrating to second grade on track for success for 68.4%, and then college ready, career ready, 84%. Can you give us a peek under the hood? What are some of the root impacts of this success or from the success?
I think there's lots of factors, of course. I think, guys, like I said earlier, the commitment to education lots of our families have. I think that's a really big part of it. And then our teaching staff is phenomenal. Our principals do a great.
Dr. Woods, I'm sorry, I just want to get clarification on it. So you mentioned families. So what do you mean by that? Can you clarify that for me, please?
I think students coming from supportive homes that have a priority on education, that it's important in that household to do well in school. And then coupled with, once they get here in school, the quality of teachers we have. I could talk for days and days about this. When we look at the stuff we do with interventions for students when they're not quite meeting where they need to be, we have the CI3T process where our schools are getting really, really good at figuring out exactly what that particular student needs and providing that service. I think our commitment to collaboration, some of our schools do that phenomenally well, and some of our schools we're getting better and better at that. But when we have our teachers, the brightest people in the building, working together on student learning, we're going to get better results all the time. You know, 2 heads are better than 1, so to speak. So I think there are lots of reasons why. I think those are some of the highlights of it.
Next question. Can you provide some clarity on our plans for the academically challenged students?
So I mentioned CI3T, and that is kind of a framework that we use, our schools use, to make sure we are providing targeted interventions based on student need. So not to bore you too much, but if you think of like there's tiers of instruction, 80% of our students are tier 1. If we're really good with our core instruction that we do every day in our classes, that's going to hit about 80% of them. And then some students will need a little bit of extra support. That might be during flex time, or in elementary school and middle school, we call it something different, but their flex time, providing the targeted supports. And then some students need even more intensive services, which might be pull-out instruction. So getting really good at the targeting of the skills that the students need, and I think too our focus on collaboration. And our teachers sitting together, planning together, talking about student learning, and when students aren't learning, working as a team to come up with a plan to help address those gaps.
Perfect, thank you. How do we avoid compromising the integrity of our success? Or
While our score,
this way here. Am I clear on the question?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, okay.
I was going to answer. I think knowing that we're not at where our scores are really high. You know, we celebrate the success of our students and teachers, but we're not at 100%. So even though we're at 95%, that's still 95%. That's 5% that didn't get to where they need to be. So I think our schools still have that fire in them that, you know, we have a lot of kids that are doing exactly as they should, but even if it's not 100%, it's not 100%. So we're going to keep working and trying to get better and better to make sure we get as close to 100 as we can.
Perfect, thank you. No need for the fourth question. Thank you.
Okay.
I have two.
I-
But
We'll just go down the line.
Okay. As soon as you
You'll
said I had
take
4, I
mine.
said I had 1.
Hey,
And
look,
I
Scott,
said,
I'll go last.
but
Okay, we'll just work
you'll
our way
take
down.
mine if I don't. So, progress on the progress slide, which was about number 12. We talk about 15 of our 17 elementary and middle schools received a rating of average or above. Is it fair to say that perhaps when you're already here, it's very hard to go from here to here, or here, or here? But when you're trying to get to here, those steps, if you're not quite that far, are faster and easier to get to?
I think that is true.
So
I
that
think
was my question. So that-
it's really difficult. It's really difficult to increase anywhere, but I think it's more difficult to go, and I'm making these numbers up, from 94% to 95% than it is to go from 15% to 40%.
Right.
Even though that number range is different, when you're already achieving at those high levels, that makes it more difficult. And I don't know if you want to jump in, but I think our new accountability model that we're going to have starting this school year right now, I think that's actually going to help us because it takes into account students' prior performance, and it gives them a personalized almost growth target that they need to get. So a student will know, okay, if you're at the 95th percentile, maybe you have to move to 95.7%, making that number up. And you'll get full credit compared to someone in the 40th percentile that needs to go to the 60th percentile.
Right, okay. And then on our graduation rates, I noticed that we kind of bounced a little bit. Obviously, we had COVID and so on and so forth. But do we have an indicator as to why it kind of dropped? Like, did we just lose interest? And I say we.
Right.
Did some students lose interest? What was maybe some?
It's hard to know exactly, but I think we should always expect some kind of fluctuation.
Certainly.
You know, so when we are that high, really anywhere, it's never going to, there's always going to be some fluctuation. I think there is some COVID lag, and maybe not even the students aren't graduating, but we lost track of them.
Right.
So if somebody left, if somebody leaves one of our schools, they don't tell us where they're going, and we never get a records request from another school, that's considered a dropout.
Right. And
Did they drop out? Well, maybe, but I mean, most likely they probably didn't drop out. They just went somewhere else, or if it's a student from another country and they go back to their home country, and we don't get a records request, then that is counted. So I think there's some of that involved with it too.
Okay.
Would expulsions play into that as well? Like a senior year expulsion, then they're out of our school district?
Do you happen to know that?
They didn't go to
That counts as
alternative?
Yeah, so that would count. Yes. Yeah.
Just, I guess, a final parting comment. I think we're doing a great job educating the whole child, and I love what we're doing with identifying and honing in on every child and every child's success every time. It's not just about these accolades and these numbers and the rest
Right.
of it. It really truly is about the child and the whole child, and I appreciate
Certainly.
that.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, your
Scott.
turn.
Wayne or Lippy, do you?
I've had some questions, some have been asked. I'll defer to you.
I'll take you
All
next, Scott.
First, I see a lot of building level administrators here, and I think I speak for everybody on the board with gratitude and appreciation for what you do at the school level. I think we see the school spotlight, and then we visit the schools and we see the amazing stuff that you're doing there. And I think this is just, just putting a validation on what we see on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis on your hard work. So we appreciate what you do. Make sure your staff knows that. And you mentioned family support and district administration. It's all part of the puzzle. And
Right.
these scores should definitely be celebrated. So I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot because
Okay.
as a former building administrator, I would get the report card, and the first thing that I would do is go to my office and figure out, what do we need to do to improve? Like right away. And I know every other administrator out here is thinking the exact same thing.
Right.
So I don't know if the answer is as important right now tonight, but I'm going to ask it again in the spring when we start talking about budget. But when
Right.
you look at when you went into your office and kind of broke this down, what were a few of the things that you noticed we really need to tackle this to improve?
Well, the first thing I would say is continue to get better at collaboration. When I go into schools and I sit in some of our PLT meetings when the teachers are working together, I'm amazed at the work that some of our teachers are doing. Stuff so far ahead of other schools that I have been in. Because again, it's the 4 biology teachers deciding on how can they best teach this standard so every student learns it, or the 5 second grade teachers saying, okay, well, here's how the students did on the math assessment. I'm really good at teaching decimals, so the kids that struggle with decimals, they'll come to me, and you're really good at teaching place value. I'm probably not even saying things that make sense for the same grade level, but they're going to go with this teacher, and then the kids struggling in this area are going to go with that teacher. And that's happening in not every single school, but a lot of our schools. So I think that helps. I also think the addition of our curriculum positions, I hear from teachers that it's helping. They're getting more support. Is it perfect? Of course not. There's growing pains whenever we add new positions. But whenever we are able to help support teachers directly with content area expertise, I think that helps as well.
Great. Thank you.
I got a couple.
All right.
So I was going to give a shout out to, you mentioned the intervention.
Mhm.
So I can just speak personally, just a shout out to Pleasant Knoll Elementary School. My son would be one who would fall into that kind of category. And I cannot explain to you just the sheer level of intervention. Like when we say intervention, it's a very just overarching.
Right.
No, it truly is. It comes at from all angles. And I can tell you he has passions for things like reading, where he always struggled. Now he actually has a passion for reading. If he can't read the word, he wants me to read it to him.
Mhm.
But where he used to just give up and quit, it's because of the atmosphere and the tone that Principal Chad Allen has set at Pleasant Knoll. That really, intervention, that word just doesn't do it justice. It's been truly life changing.
Right.
So
That's great.
I wanted to say that. Now, we were talking about retention, teacher retention. It seemed pretty high. Like, what would you say? It was 85%?
87.5.
Okay. How are we rating in the state on retention?
I can't tell you exactly, but that is higher than most districts. I don't want to give you false information, but it compares favorably. I would say it's probably at the very top, but I don't know that for sure. But that is still a challenge. That's still 13% turnover. So that is an area that we are always concerned about, and we have Bernice, that works daily on that problem. So I think we compare favorably to other districts across the state, but still an area of concern.
We were at 9% 2 years ago, and it went to 13. So it's an area of concern. But I think that's part of the macro, the bigger picture of teachers leaving the profession.
Yes. Yeah.
So overall, though, if we're still hanging, it seems like we're hanging pretty tight right there. I think we may find the bottom. I think we will find it, and hopefully we have found it. But why do you feel like that we do well in this area? Are there a couple key components that you just know, like, hey, we're knocking this out of the park? Is there anything?
As far as keeping teachers?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm the right person to ask, but I know our salary compared to other districts is favorable. Of course, teachers always deserve more. I'll be the first person to say that. But I think compared to other districts, we have favorable pay compared to others. I think when you look at I've been in lots of districts. I've worked in several districts and been in schools all across the country. I think our student behavior is really, really phenomenal compared to other places that I've been in. I think that is part of it. I think there's factors such as, we have a supportive community, getting our kids ready, like I talked about with the 52%. I think that makes a big difference as well. So those are a couple of things, 3 things that come to mind right away.
That's awesome.
And I would add, and the people in the room, right? Those principals back there that make the working conditions and the climate and beautiful facilities and all those things attractive compared to a lot of other places.
And I should have mentioned the principals, because that's probably the number one. That's probably the number one reason why teachers stay in a building when they have great principals. And you all know we have phenomenal principals, so that's a big part of it.
Okay, so 2 more quick. Who beat us on graduation rate?
Oh, well, it might have been.
I don't want to hear it out loud. I don't want to hear their name.
Okay.
Do they have love in the middle of it?
Paper.
Yes, they do.
Okay.
They do.
We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, we beat them last year, and we're going to beat them again this year.
Okay. And
so that's a great point. Matt pointed out that we did beat them by a lot in college or career ready. I think for like 84% to 60-something%. So we did get them pretty good on that.
We'll take that win. And I just got to say, I love the participation rate that we got from the feedback. It's outstanding.
Yes. Yeah.
Like that lets us know that we have very engaged. They want to engage. They're not turned off by that. So I love that. It's good. It's really good feedback.
Great. Thank you.
All right. My primary question, I think you've sort of already answered in talking with Dr. Frateroli down there, but all of our schools we want them all to be the same, to perform just alike each other and be as carbon copy as possible, all the great things at each and every school. But reality is we've got different communities at every school.
Right.
The makeup of the students, the parents, the teachers, all of that is different at every one. And I'm super excited with the results that we've gotten, and that is really great. Happy for all the schools. But like the school, there was I think 15 out of 17 that were average or above, and so that leaves 2 that weren't. I'm assuming we're putting additional resources or focus on those to help bring them up into the same ballpark.
Right.
And one of the things you said to him, now I forget what it was. Sorry, but could you confirm or address that?
Yes, I think one thing that we're doing, they're in the middle of doing right now with Peter and Amber, we're doing instructional rounds, and this is something we learned from Greenville County Schools. And we have I think 4 of our schools, some wanted to do it, and some we picked it based on several different factors, where we are going in, taking a very deep dive into their data, figuring out what it is, or listening to the school, what it is they're working on specifically from the principal and leadership team, and then visiting classrooms the next day. And looking for very specific things, and then coming back and reporting that back out to the school leadership team. Like, okay, you were looking for academic feedback, and we saw it in X number of visits. And there's a whole protocol that Peter and Amber are doing a great job with to provide support. And we just started that this year at 4 schools, and we hope to increase that as we figure out the process. So I think that gives some very targeted feedback to the school leadership team with different eyes. Sometimes you see the same thing and it gets, sometimes you always need fresh eyes on stuff. And it gives us from the district a chance to be in schools for a long period of time. It's about a day and a half process, about 3/4 of a day and a half a day over 2 days. So that's some targeted specific help that we are offering to the schools.
Collaboration was the topic that
Yes.
discussed a while ago that I was thinking about.
Yes.
Just for a second. But yeah, I've been on the board for 14 years, and school district has grown considerably during that time. And one of the things we talked about early on was we need more collaboration between the schools, and you know, learn good things here. Well, if it works well here, it likely was going to work well over there.
Right.
But I just want to commend the district. We have done more and more of that over the years. There's always room for improvement, addition, and you alluded to some of that already.
Right.
But I just want to thank the district for taking that on and fostering more collaboration.
Great. Thank you.
You know, and I would just add a couple things because we covered most of them. It's disappointing that I think our high school graduation rate is, to your point, much higher. But if students leave and go somewhere else and we don't have record of them, then without being able to get them out of the denominator, you know,
Right.
I do believe it's probably higher than that.
Yes.
I do find it interesting that the college and career readiness, the college part, talks about AP exams as opposed to CP exams, right? Because the AP is not necessarily to prepare you for college. The CP classes are the college prep classes, you know, or honors classes. So I just think that's interesting that it uses an AP as a criteria when that's not necessarily a requirement for college in any fashion at all.
Well, another thing that's interesting is a student can qualify for a Hope Scholarship, which is from the state of South Carolina. You know, we have the Life Scholar and the Life Scholars and Palmetto Fellows, but there's also a Hope, which is a smaller scholarship. But they can qualify for that and not be considered college or career ready.
Any of these things.
Right. Yeah.
So
So the state will give you money for college and think you're ready, but they won't count you in that metric.
and it'll be free soon.
That's
right?
yeah.
Like USC,
That's right.
The other thing I was thinking about, Anthony, when you asked your question about, you know, what are some of the reasons we think for this success? Do you know if there's a metric at all about student attendance rate? Like we talk about teacher attendance rate, but I would have to believe actually being in the classroom with our wonderful educators a large portion of the 180 days
Right.
would have to play into the success as well. And I suspect that we have high student attendance rate
Right.
compared to other districts.
I don't believe it's a metric that's we get points for, but I know it's something we definitely do track and try to improve upon. But that's a big part of it. Yeah, you have to be in school to learn, but it's not actually part of the accountability model.
And likewise, you know, we talked about our growth. I think it's great that we have 53-ish% that come into kindergarten ready. We get a lot of kids that didn't come to us in kindergarten.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I have no idea what their number was when they entered kindergarten, but
Right.
probably not 50+% of them were ready when they come to us from some other district.
Certainly.
So I think that again, that speaks to it. It's an even steeper growth than what that slide may look like, probably. Good job,
It would be interesting to pull that data and see which of our high school students started here. I think we've done that before. I don't remember what the results were, but just for
see
curiosity.
how different it may look if you've spent all of your time at our wonderful district as opposed to coming from somewhere else that may not have had the same advantages. Anything else? Awesome. Great job. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Everybody in the back. Next up, we've got a couple of policies. I guess, Dr. Waitens, you're going to do the first one again, right?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to talk about Gavin's Law, and I don't want to get anything wrong, so I'm going to read exactly from my notes. But Gavin's Law was named after Representative Brandon Guffey's son, Gavin Guffey. The General Assembly passed a new law establishing sexual extortion and aggravated felony extortion as criminal offenses and setting prison sentences for each. This law amends a previous code of law that was in existence for our state. One of the statutory requirements is for school districts to collaborate with the South Carolina Department of Education, SLED, and the Attorney General's office to implement a policy to educate and notify students and families of the provisions of the new law. So to help satisfy this collaboration component on behalf of our member districts, or on behalf of member districts, the South Carolina School Board Association facilitated this collaboration amongst the different groups and created a model policy. So that's what we're going to do for first reading tonight. So we have the policies that we have to implement, but then also there's an education component to Gavin's Law where we have to figure out how we are going to teach our students about Gavin's Law in each grade, all the way through. It's supposed to be age-appropriate curriculum. So we are currently working on what that will look like. It'll probably go through our cybersecurity lessons for elementary school and then probably in our health classes for middle and high school. But we're working through that. We have to have that finalized by the summer.
And it starts next year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So tonight is the first reading, and you received two policies in your packet. The first one is JICFB, and this is geared towards students, and it includes a section on reporting this type of incident when someone feels they may be a victim of sexual extortion. It clearly defines what the law is, what the offense is, and what are the consequences as far as the law enforcement goes if a person is guilty of that. And then it also talks about how it has to be part of our school discipline matrix. So, of course, if a student was in that situation and one of our students caused it, there would be discipline for our students. And then the second policy is GBEBE. And that is almost an exact carbon copy of the first one, except it's geared towards adults and staff, and it talks about learning and work environment, where the student one talks about students and a learning environment, not in the workplace. So you've received a copy of both of those, and if you have any questions at this time, I will try to answer them or get back to you with the information.
The only question I have is, are we already covered with our student discipline matrix, or does anything need to be updated for that as well?
It is covered under,
we have a line item that this would line.
Does
Okay.
cover that, but we might need to look at it.
Okay, we'll double check it, but yeah, sounds like it's in there. That's good.
And so a couple other things before talking with other districts. Some things that they are doing is sending out messages to families about what the law is through ConnectEd or whatever system they have to notify people. Some of the schools at the high schools are posting flyers around the school talking about what it is and what you can do if you find yourself in this situation. So that will be part of our campaign to get the word out, so to speak, as well.
Which can actually start sooner, even though it's required
Right.
next year, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Any questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay,
All right.
thank you very
See you
much.
at the next meeting with it.
And then also a first reading for some life-saving medications. Mr. Young?
Yes, good evening. I'm here to present policy JLCDB. We currently have this policy already in board policy. It's called use of epinephrine auto-injectors, but we are changing that, or would like to change it, to use of life-saving medications. So really, it just changes the word from epinephrine and auto-injectors, epinephrine auto-injectors or EpiPens, to the words life-saving medications. So existing law authorized the use of EpiPens, and in schools, it was amended to include all life-saving medications.
So I know it was specifically talked about as Narcan, but are there others?
There are, I asked our nurse that today. She said, sometimes inhalers can be included in that, but we do not stockpile inhalers. So that would it would mostly be Narcan. It would give our nurses the ability to have Narcan and administer that if needed, so.
Which it's my understanding that they will make Narcan available to all schools to have on.
Correct. We already have them, and as soon as this policy is approved, hopefully, by you guys, then they will distribute that to our nurses at every school.
Super.
So, any questions?
Go for it.
All
Okay.
right. That was easy.
That brings us to the end of our open session. We have an executive session, but it is not a traditional executive session. It is a student discipline appeal. So we will say thank you to all of you for joining us. We're going to need to clear the room so that we can hold our student discipline appeal in the next few minutes. So thanks everybody for coming, and